Hey guys, for this video, I wanted to talk about a few things regarding some tweets from the devs and some replies from the devs from both the Eurogamer and the NME interviews, as well as some things about the open beta and the early access beta. Friday, for the open beta this last weekend, I logged in and I was hit with about a 45-minute queue, and I think I DC'd or logged out once that night, and the queue was about an hour. But the very next day, on Saturday, the queues were non-existent for me. I think they said about a minute, and it wasn't even that long before I got in. So it's pretty impressive how quickly the devs were able to put out some hot fixes to vastly improve those queue times for everybody, as well as the server stability. I had a few issues with running into invisible walls and rubber banding, but not nearly as many as I had with the open beta the weekend prior. So I think personally it shows promise for the official launch. You know, it shows that the devs are willing to jump on it and act fast to try and get this launch as smooth as possible, which is a good thing. So I'm really hopeful for the launch. Even if there are queue times, I'm okay with that as long as the servers are smooth and there's no disconnecting. Anyway, on to some tweets from the devs in response to complaints. So a lot of people are complaining that there's, no class balance. And I tend to agree with that. The balance seems to be a little off. But again, we only got to level 25. It is a beta. We're very low level. I did get every class to 25 with the exception of the barb, and the reason for that was because it was very difficult. It was very hard for me to play and level, so I ended up just giving up on it. I did play a druid as well, a werewolf build, and I did enjoy that. That was a lot of fun. I was playing with another friend, so I don't think it was as hard for me. I know it did seem a lot weaker than the other classes, but at least I had fun with it. But something to note there with the druid, they even let us know before the beta launched that the druid's class-specific mechanic wouldn't be available because the quest takes you outside of that, fractured peak zone that we were limited to. So I think that's something a lot of people are missing. That's something that we need to keep in mind. Everybody was playing a druid without a major function to that class, which changes, how they play. So in terms with the barb, Rod Ferguson had a comment to say in the NME interview. I'll throw the tweet up here. The comment, I'm sorry. In a quote, he said, "There is a lot of balance there, but the trick around balance is that it's a balance over time, not a balance of the moment. Not all classes at level 5 should have the same power. Due to the enchantment specialization, sorcerers will have the most skills of any class because with barbarians having 4 weapons, they will have the most legendary slots of any class. When you take that across all of them, there will be different points in time where a barbarian is in some ways a little underpowered compared to some of the other classes in, say, the first 10 to 20 levels." And they went on to say that, but when you get to level 30 or 40 and legendaries are falling a lot, barbarians can be super strong. Then there are things around skill gap, which I think is built into it. I think the agility and the mobility of a rogue is harder to play than a necromancer that has 12 skeletons fighting on their side that they can just send out and fight. So, I tend to agree with that. I think at these lower levels, it's not every class should play the same. Certainly, they shouldn't be. There's different levels and different gaps and everything. And certainly skill has a factor to play in it as well. So, I can understand that. I can get where they're coming from. So, he also did mention, Rod Ferguson, that legendary drops were tuned up for the beta. I don't know as if he said how much, but he did say that they are tuned higher to give a fuller experience and better test during the beta. So, that's something else we need to keep in mind. And then on to legendaries. A lot of people have been saying that legendaries drop too often and are too much. They won't add anything new after acquiring the handful that we get in the beta. Again, like I said, Rod Ferguson did say that they are tuned up, so we are getting more. On launch, we won't be getting nearly as much. I think, at least up these first 25 levels. But also there was a tweet from Joseph Pipiora that I will throw up. He says, "I don't think folks realize how many more legendary powers exist beyond what was on display during the Diablo 4 beta. There's a lot of bizarre, exciting, and totally balanced legendaries to discover when the game goes live in June." So, that is something that people, I don't think, really fully take into account as well. There's a lot of legendaries that, drop after 25. And beyond legendaries, there's even uniques, which don't even start dropping until, I think, level 50, World Tier 3. So there's a lot of things that people don't exactly always think about. And I think that changes things. So, and again, with legendaries being tweaked to drop more often, I think we can safely assume that on launch, the leveling experience is going to be pretty different. And personally, I'm okay with that. Leveling in most of the games I play is a big part of the experience for me. I really enjoy it. This is a game where I see myself creating more than one of the same character, and especially with the seasons rolling out every 3 months, I think they said, it's something I'm okay with. Another thing that a lot of players have been complaining about is the dungeons and how they seem to be redundant and boring. You're doing the same thing, you're backtracking a lot. Now, for me personally, I didn't really have an issue with that. I didn't notice it as much. Certainly there were some dungeons that I was like, oh man, we're backtracking. This is kind of dumb. But for the most part, I didn't really realize it. I didn't have an issue with it. Then again, I was mostly playing Rogue. And the mobility on Rogue is, I think, vastly superior to all the other classes. So I was kind of zooming through dungeons fairly easy and fast. But Joe Shelley in the NME interview had this to say about that. Said, "We don't want players to be running through an empty dungeon. In cases where you're going to get a key and you're running back through an area, there should be enemies that are showing up to refresh that. It is a goal of ours that you're not running through an empty dungeon, basically, ever. It can be okay for very short periods of time." And, I'm okay with that. Backtracking certainly isn't something that bothers me as long as the experience, isn't backtracking through empty areas. So, be interesting to see, at higher levels and different zones, exactly how that plays through. So, and then on to skill intensity. This is something I wanted to bring up. This is something I tested because I knew it was a feature going into the beta. The more points you put into a skill, the more intense that skill will look. I mostly did it on the Sork, and you can I definitely noticed that it's there, but apparently a lot of people weren't. Either they didn't notice it or they weren't satisfied with the improvements. I'm not, entirely sure where the majority of people that have the issue with that stand, but there was a tweet. Somebody on Twitter asked Daniel Briggs if that was still a feature in the game, and he did. He confirmed that it is. Sorry. I'll throw the tweet up. He said, "Yes, this is still in the game. The beta is limited to level 25. There's a ton of additional content, especially at higher world tiers. Your skill intensity is based on your skill points and legendary affixes for that skill. The total rank that a skill can get to includes 5 points you can spend onto your skill tree before you cap out, plus 6 from plus skill point affixes, plus 3 from plus skill category affixes, and plus 4 from extremely rare redacted." Not sure what the redacted is, but sure we'll be all surprised. Modifying the size of a skill can come from many different sources. Skill points for certain skills, legendary items, legendary paragon nodes, and glyphs. So again, I tested that on the Sork mostly, and I 100% did notice a difference. I know I said that already, but I think it's very cool. The more points you invest in them, in a certain skill or spell, the more intense it looks. So it's kind of like a payoff. You want to specialize in Inferno, for instance. You'll certainly see that. It's quite cool. It'll show how powerful that that skill is. So anyway, that's about it for this video. They are doing a deep dive, they said, after the open beta. I don't know when. I don't know if they said when, but I will be trying to cover that as well. So I look forward to that. I look forward to digesting that and going through it in another video for you guys. Again, thanks for watching. Have a good one.